name is Dr. Daniel Fox, and I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Texas and an expert in the area of personality disorders. And I made a video a little while back on questions and answers that I got from folks that have subscribed to my website. And it was pretty successful, and people really seemed to enjoy it and get a lot of benefit from it. And so I thought, well, I'll make another one, and because I've gotten some other questions, and see if this can also further help some folks as well. So we'll get started. I'll do 3 questions. The questions, again, do come from folks. I send out a request for questions through my website, and these are some of the questions that I got back. So we'll start first. First is Zefi. She's from Australia. Australia's pretty awesome. I've been there myself 2 times. Pretty exciting. Her question is just a quick question regarding dependent personality disorder. The DSM explains the dependency features as occurring within a functional context, right? i.e. driven by the belief I can't do things on my own. I'm wondering, though, whether you consider DPD, dependent personality disorder, as entailing an emotional dependence as well. So, Zefi, thank you very much for your question. That's a really good question. So what we find is that individuals with dependent personality disorder, that they have this intense dependency, right, on others, on this identified object, and they are very submissive to that identified object. So it's like that they're a puzzle, and there's one piece missing. And that identified object, they believe, is that missing piece. So as long as that other, identified other, is in their life, that becomes their piece. Now, certainly it is a cognitive dependency, but it's very much also an emotional dependency, right? That they feed each other. We see that. And a lot of folks with dependent personality disorder, they often struggle with who they are because without that validation or confirmation from that other person, they tend to have these feelings of loss, right? Or this feeling of uncertainty, or that I'm not able to do it, I'm not good enough, I'm not efficacious enough. Now, this leads to cognitive and emotional dependency. Okay, so they don't know how to define who they are, right, without clarifying it with that other person first. And that goes for emotions as well. Is their emotion accurate? So a lot of times they can't accurately identify or define their emotions without that clarification from that other individual. Okay, so they often need this cognitive explanation to know how they feel. Okay, and if it may sound confusing or sound weird, well, why would someone be like that? It's because of that dependency, and it's often confusing for them. And so that basis, I'm going to talk a little bit just about what dependent personality is. A lot of these features you'll see in borderline personality disorder, certainly in the other cluster B folks as well. So what happens is for dependent personality disorder, you see that usually this dependency is typically triggered by expectations of self-reliance, this lack of self-reliance and dependency on others, great fear of being alone. They tend to behave in a very docile, passive, very sort of a submissive style that lacks any type of assertiveness and is full of self-doubt. This is in regards or in relation to that object of other that they are dependent on. What's interesting is that some of these folks sometimes is that they can be very aggressive with some other folks if that dependent object, that object of dependency, is being attacked. They'll become very, very aggressive in some cases, passive aggressive in others. Okay, so to defend that object of dependency, they can become aggressive. So around others, right, they're often very pleasing though, they're very clingy, very compliant, they need that constant reassurance, a lot of poor decision-making ability because they always hold it off until they can get that validation from that other individual. They desperately seek a new relationship when one ends, so a lot of serial monogamy. But for example, if they had a breakup in the morning, it's not uncharacteristic and not a surprise that they would be in a relationship by that afternoon. And that's not meant as a joke or anything like that. That tends to be sort of that cycle, a lot of serial monogamy. So one relationship to another, to another, to another. And these relationships can last for a long, long time because that person will adjust themselves to fit into that relationship, anything to keep it going for that identified object of dependency. Okay, they tend to hold the belief that they can't do things on their own. Okay, so that would be part of that cognitive component, and this applies to most, if not all, aspects of their life. They see themselves as inadequate, often defective, sees others as their caretakers because they do not believe they can do it for themselves. Okay, and their first step towards treatment, so when they engage in treatment, the first thing you want to do is identify that dependency pattern and the consequences to being so dependent. What aspect of their lives are they missing, or are they missing out, or have they left behind relationships that they have neglected because of that dependent other? Okay, and so then you want to learn to distinguish who they are outside of that connection to that other individual, and grow and develop their own sense of beliefs and patterns. And it can take a really long time to build that sense of self, that sense of understanding in individuals that have that dependent personality disorder. This was a great question. Thank you very much, Zefi, from Australia. I appreciate it very much. Let's go on to the next question. My question number 2, this is Michelle from the Netherlands, and she writes, is there growing beyond borderline, or are there clients who never come to that point? And I think what Michelle is asking is it possible to grow out of, or to no longer be or have borderline personality disorder? I don't like saying to be borderline, because I think that my clients are people that have this disorder, and I don't think that it is who they are. So I first encourage them to challenge them a little bit, to think differently, that you're more than this disorder. That's so important. Even though this disorder can be immense, and it can feel like it's a giant, heavy, hot, wet blanket that hangs over them, we work to undo that belief, that understanding. Because once you have that sense of encouragement and power of self, then you can start to do things differently. But yes, people can grow beyond borderline personality disorder. Absolutely, positively. I absolutely have seen it. I've been fortunate enough to work with a number of folks that have overcome, managed, and controlled their borderline personality disorder. And if you were to meet them today, you wouldn't even know it. But let's talk a little bit about that, because let's talk about what the research shows, right? And this is what's out there. And I'm also putting the citations in the comments section, not in the comments, in the write-up of the video as well, so that you can read them, so you can see them, because this is really important that you know that. Now, research shows that acute symptoms have a better prognosis than the temperamental symptoms, okay? And this comes from a really great article. I'll read what those acute symptoms are, as well as what the temperamental symptoms are right now. So we know that acute symptoms have a better prognosis than temperamental symptoms, okay? And this is from Zadarini, and again, the citations are below, okay? So these acute symptoms, okay, so those are affective symptoms, affective instability, right? So that those emotional ups and downs. Okay. Cognitive symptoms, this is the quasi-psychotic thought or serious identity disturbances. So if a lot of folks are at a higher likelihood for a psychotic break, depending on where you are on that borderline spectrum, okay? But remember that these have a better prognosis, so there's a better probability of controlling these symptoms and overcoming them. Substance abuse dependence, sexual deviance, self-mutilation, manipulative suicide efforts. Interpersonal symptoms include stormy relationships, devaluation, manipulation, and sadism. Demandingness, entitlement, serious treatment regressions, and countertransference problems such as special treatment relationships. These are the acute symptoms for those with borderline personality disorders, and these have a better prognosis than this next, and the temperamental symptoms that I'm going to read to you now. And the affective symptoms for temperamental symptoms, this is chronic or major depression, chronic feelings of helplessness or hopelessness, chronic anger, frequent angry acts, chronic anxiety, chronic loneliness or emptiness, as well as like odd thinking and unusual perceptual experiences, non-delusional paranoia, general impulsivity, intolerance of aloneness, abandonment, engulfment, annihilation concerns, counterdependency, serious conflict over help and care, and dependency and masochism. So those are at a lower likelihood of prognosis, but that doesn't mean that you can't overcome it. And if you read these articles, you'll see that it is very much possible to overcome it. Okay. Now, these are longitudinal studies. Longitudinal studies are very hard to come by. They're very expensive, but that you have a 16-year follow-up, you have a 10-year follow-up. So this is really good data. Let's talk about that now. So BPD symptoms, right? They're often fluid with remissions and reoccurrences being common. So that means borderline personality disorder, right? As we're going along, you have a remission of those symptoms. Those symptoms, whatever your criteria are that puts you on that borderline spectrum, they remit for a period of time. And they'll kick back up if something occurs, if something happens. Could be a breakup, could be the death of a loved one, it could be an argument, whatever it may be that may kick up those symptoms. But if there's remissions, right, then that may come back. But also remissions are in the future as well. So we see that it's a lot like that ebb and flow, right, of a heart rate monitor, that it's up and down, and we see that. Okay. Now recovery is difficult but not impossible. Okay. Now a 10-year follow-up, okay, a 10-year study, found that 50% recovered from borderline personality disorder. Now, these remission of symptoms and having a good prognosis and vocational functioning, that's what they considered, okay, to have recovered from borderline personality disorder. And it's really important, so I want to say it again. What happened is for these 50% of these folks that were diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, they were identified as recovered. And to meet that criteria, so it was a remission of symptoms, okay, and they had a good psychosocial and vocational functioning. So psychosocial is like you have good friendships, good relationships, and you're interacting appropriately with others, good boundaries for self and other, cognitively reading and understanding the environment, and good vocational functioning. You're able to keep your job, you're able to succeed at whatever your job may be. So now it is possible, but treatment is important in order to reach this. Now, 88% of individuals with borderline personality disorder stay in treatment. That is great news. That is when you get into treatment, you find someone who's good, that 88% of those are staying in treatment, right? That they're working through it. This goes against this belief, and this is a big part of why I do these videos, is that individuals with borderline personality disorder do want treatment. They do want to learn about themselves. They do want to control this disorder and grow beyond it. They really, really do, right? Just as Michelle did, who's writing, trying to get an understanding. And they do. And 88% stay in treatment because they know those remissions occur, right? And then they want to keep building those skills. They want to keep building their ability to manage those issues that they encounter, that they can do it, and it's happening. So it's so important. So Michelle, that's a great question. Thank you very much. I know a lot of people are wondering that as well. Well, let's move on to our last question. That's our third question. Our third question is from E, and he writes, how does someone with BPD or another disorder that easily loses a grip on things know when they are overreacting? I ask this because I'm constantly uncertain if I misunderstood and overreacted, or if I was right in being so upset. That's a great question. I think a lot of folks that are in cluster B, and cluster B is antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and histrionic personality disorder. That's what makes up our cluster B. Folks that are in that cluster often feel that way. They're often second guessing. And I think where that comes from is that during their developmental period, as they're growing up, very, very early in their childhood, is that they're often gaslit. And that is this manipulation. It could be caregivers, could be other family members, it could be mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin, whoever it may be, that they gaslight these kids as they're growing up. And what they're doing is that, so the kid, the child sort of reaches out, acts in some way to sort of test their autonomy, and that caregiver then tells them that they're wrong. Well, you're wrong. Well, what about this? Well, this isn't right. It's like saying, well, the sky is blue. Well, it's not really blue because it's a reflection off the ocean, so that means you're wrong. You understand you're wrong. And they grow up with that over and over. And it's a belief about self and a belief about others. And then when you encounter something and you have to assert yourself, that what happens is that you're uncertain about that level of interaction. And you have a difficulty reading the passive, assertive, and aggressive, right, reaction style. Your passive style is that, right, it's like playing possum. So you just let it happen. You put your head down. You let people say and do things to you as they see fit. So, and then your assertive style is that you assert yourself to get your needs met without taking away from the other individual. That other individual's self-respect is intact. Okay? And then your aggressive style is that you act in a way to cause a wound in that other individual and their respect and their pride and their belief in themselves. Okay? So that's the aggressive. And what we want to do is we want to build that sense of assertiveness. How can you assert yourself without taking away from others? The most socially skilled individuals are assertive. They can communicate their needs and wants in a way that is accurate for themselves. But if you've been gaslit growing up, even when you're assertive and you've had a good interaction with somebody, but you're asserting yourself, you're asserting your own beliefs. So what happens is it falls back on you where you're like, well, maybe that was too much. You know what? I would have been better off being passive. I was better off being aggressive because that's what I know and that's what I understand. But we want to build that sense of understanding for assertiveness. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, we want to avoid majoring in the minors. So if there's something small, make sure that you manage your response based upon the environmental stimuli, that you're reacting to whatever's occurring in your environment in an equal manner. Or sometimes if someone is being aggressive, you can control the situation by being assertive. Don't allow yourself, your emotions, once they start dictating your response, you're in trouble. That's happened a lot with my clients. That happens with me and everybody else on the planet, is that once our emotions get involved, our brain turns off and our limbic system kicks in, and we want to resolve the situation immediately, as quickly as possible. And it tends to make things worse because an aggressive response tends to mean that that individual is losing part of who they are. They're losing part of their self-respect, and that might feel good in the short term. But typically in the long term, if you do that with everyone around you, you tend to lose everyone around you. Okay? And then last is we want to build your sense of self-monitoring, like what we talked about. There's a lot of assertiveness skills out there. You can look on you can Google self-assertiveness or assertiveness skills, read them, find 2 or 3 that seem to fit with you, right? And try these every day. Just continue to try them and how you become comfortable with them and self-monitor your reaction, right? Sometimes it's good to get a worksheet and you can write out different interactions. So this was the antecedent. It's called an ABC, right? This is the antecedent. This was your behavior. Okay. And your behavior can also be verbal, right? We can say the things that you said and things like that. And then your consequences. And you can write these out and then compare that with those assertiveness skills, right? That you're trying to build for yourself. And you can make that determination, make that accurate determination. And you want to also keep your baseline low. Now, how do we do that? Because if you're already sort of amped up, that means your emotions are ready to go, right? You're already turned up to 11. So you're primed and you're ready to go. We don't want to do that. We want to have it lower so that you can assess the environment accurately and accurately make the decision to respond in an effective way. Okay? Yoga is great to do that on a regular basis. Exercise on a regular basis. Eat right. Fast food is not good. Every once in a while, we all have it every once in a while, but too often, and diet does impact mental health. That's a video that's on my list to do later on. I think that that's really important, is that what we eat can really determine how we react in situations and how we feel about ourselves. There's a great show that I like. It's called Fit to Fat to Fit. You can check it out. It's very, very interesting. And you can see the impact of health and lifestyle on depression, anxiety, other types of factors as well. And I think it really is illuminated in that show. It's very, very interesting. And then meditation, build that in there. Mindfulness, I do mindfulness all the time, multiple times every day. And it really helps me to kind of keep centered, keep focused, and know what's going on around me, and also how I'm reacting and feeling to it. It's really a great skill to build. So E, thank you very much for this question. It was a great question. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. If you did, I could do another video on questions and answers as well down the road. I hope that you find this useful. That's really my hope, is to put information out there that's positive, that's helpful, that's helping folks to make a change in their life. So I really hope that that this does that for you. If you like this and my other videos, please subscribe if you want. That'd be great. I'm trying to make this a real positive resource for folks that have personality disorders, particularly borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, to put some positive and accurate information out there. So thank you very much for your time and attention and questions, and I hope my answers were helpful for you. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Bye-bye.